Hey everyone, welcome to Killer Bites, a show where we talk about all things crime in the kitchen. In this episode, I'll be telling you about the spooky happenings at Hotel Barclay while making dal makhani. The recipe is in the description below if you'd like to follow along. Hotel Barclay is an old hotel in the heart of downtown Los Angeles that has been the location of so many terrible crimes and mysterious occurrences. The things that have happened there are so bad, the hotel literally changed names. But a simple name change wouldn't erase the building's history or get rid of the many ghosts that roam the halls. I'm gonna get started by heating oil in a pan and sauteing lentils. Before there was Hotel Barclay, there was the Van Nuys Hotel. When it first opened in 1897, the Van Nuys Hotel was the talk of the town. With lavish parlors, a bar, a swanky dining room, and telephone service and electricity in each room, this was one of the most luxurious hotels of the time. But the Van Nuys Hotel was cursed, even before it opened to the public. In 1896, a huge oil tank was being raised, the rope snapped, and the tank fell right on top of a man named James. As awful as the accident was, that wouldn't stop the hotel from opening. But just one day after the doors were opened to the public, another tragedy struck. There was a streetcar being pulled by horses who got spooked and started running. One thing led to another, and the horses led the streetcar straight into a telegraph pole outside of the Van Nuys Hotel. The accident was so bad, several of the horses passed away. 2 months later, one of the hotel waiters named Charles Gamble was sent to the third floor to pick up a tray of dishes. He was one of the waiters who handled room service, so this was a common task he performed. This time, after Charles grabbed the dishes and stepped into the elevator cage, something terrible happened. Robert, the boy in charge of operating the elevator, was trying to stop it, but turned the wheel in the wrong direction and sent the cage back up to the top. When it reached the third floor, Robert opened the door and stepped out. Charles tried to get out as well, but before his foot could land, he hit the top of the doorway and the rising elevator cage shot him forward and pinned his legs. As the elevator kept going up, Charles's legs snapped, and the next thing he knew, he was dangling by 1 foot. In an instant, Charles fell 3 stories down and plummeted to the basement, which of course featured concrete flooring. For about 30 minutes, Charles remained conscious and aware of his brutal injuries. The Herald described Charles as mangled in a terrible manner, his head and one side of his face crushed to a pulp, both legs broken above the knees so that the bones protruded from the quivering flesh, 1 foot nearly torn off, injured internally, and ejecting blood with every breath. Yikes. Also, I've always been so freaked out by those old elevators, and now I know why. Actually, I'm freaked out by all elevators, even the new ones. I'll take the stairs over getting trapped in or ejected by a heavy-duty machine like that any day. Sadly, Charles wasn't the only person to lose a life in that elevator. In 1901, another hotel worker named Joe peered down the elevator shaft without realizing a 4,800-pound cage was about to whack him over the head. On the bright side, Joe's death happened much more quickly than Charles's. And at least he didn't see it coming. I feel like that's better than anticipating the drop or having to go through the excruciatingly painful process of getting his leg snapped. 1 year later, the hotel butcher got in a fight with another one of the employees who worked in the kitchen. Ironically enough, the fight involved blades and the butcher lost. Not only the fight, but his life. So yeah, people who stepped foot in this building didn't have the best of luck. In 1909, Ada Tilt Otis, a socialite, athlete, and the daughter of a famous Chicago millionaire, checked into the Van Nuys Hotel. She had just gotten a divorce from her alcoholic husband, and like most people who freshly went through divorce, she wasn't doing well. Even though Ada was popular and had all this money, she was described as the most unhappy woman in the world. She met up with a friend one time and talked about how she would never get married again and was absolutely disgusted by the illusions of society. Honestly, same. Well, on August 4th, Ada's personal sadness and hatred for the world had gotten to her. She took a lethal swig of poison and was found in her hotel room, barely hanging on to life. She was rushed to a nearby hospital where she passed away just a few days later. When a detective paid a visit to Ada's room to investigate, he found a note she left behind for the son of some millionaire in San Francisco. The letter said, "The game is not worth the candle." That's it. That's the note. Well, she signed it too, but like those 7 words, that's all she wrote. What do you think it means? Life isn't worth it? In general, the happenings at the Van Nuys Hotel were pretty crazy. Aside from these specific stories of tragedy and death, some other things going on at the time include hotel employees stealing from guests, con men and scammy women staying at the hotel and not paying their bills. One guest was being stalked by some creepy dude, one was robbed by someone with a firearm, and bar fights were pretty common. It's strange because this hotel was seen as an elegant, high-end place for the rich and famous to stay at, but it was placed smack dab in the middle of an LA neighborhood that didn't match that vibe. While plump and wealthy businessmen were dining on fancy meals, homeless people were standing outside with their stomachs growling, and young scrappy wannabes were partying at the bar next door. In 1911, W. Arthur Phillips, an old millionaire who had been staying at the hotel for around 5 years, passed away. One report said it was cirrhosis, another said it was heart disease, and the Los Angeles Times alleged his life of ennui, confinement, and lack of exercise hastened the end. In reality, Arthur kind of made himself go crazy leading up to his demise because he thought this crime group named the Black Hand was out to get him. So it could have been caused by a sprinkle of paranoia too. Seriously though, Arthur was so freaked out, he made his wife, who was much younger than him, stay cooped up in the hotel room with him at all times, along with their dog Teddy. As bad as it sounds, Arthur's passing was kind of a relief for the wife and dog. All of that to say, Arthur was famous for haunting the hotel in the years following his fatality. And given how disturbed he was, his ghost probably wasn't the kindest. In 1920, a man attempted to take his own life in the hotel. Just a few years later, another man tried and succeeded. His name was William Edward Collier. William drank a bunch of cyanide in front of an employee who was helping him pack. Gosh, that had to be such a horrific event for that employee. After William kicked the bucket, divorce papers against his wife and one of the shadiest, most hateful suicide notes was found in his belongings. Let's pause for dramatic reading. To my wife, Ida Collier, my darling, I go never more to return. I have done my best, and this is the only way I can give you the freedom you crave. You made me a cheat and a liar before the world, and I gladly assumed the burden for you. You murdered my soul. Now you kill my body. So as you go through life thinking of the soul roasting in hell because of you, each night watch my face float before you, and each day hear the moans of the tormented soul you blasted and sent to hell for eternity. Damn, I would not want to be Ida. That chick is about to be haunted for the rest of her life. So by this point, many people had lost their lives at the Van Nuys Hotel, intentionally and unintentionally. And many of those people were now tormenting the guests and staff as ghosty ghosts. Now I'm going to add in some water and butter. In 1929, the hotel was bought out and renamed Hotel Barclay, which I think the name change was probably more about trying to start fresh with a new reputation, but you can decide what you think. For the next several years, the hotel lost any charm it may have had. It was now a faded, run-of-the-mill hotel with a creepy history. Nothing notable on the topic of crime happened until 1937. That year, 71-year-old Akron, Ohio native Elizabeth Reese took a solo trip around the Panama Canal and stopped at Hotel Barclay along the way. She checked in on December 29th, and just a few days later, a maid walked into a strange scene. Elizabeth was sitting upright in her chair, but she had been badly bludgeoned and was no longer alive. A reporter wrote, "A brick was found in the woman's bed. The bed clothing also was saturated with blood and articles of clothing scattered around the room." Someone had clearly done this to Elizabeth, but oddly enough, she still had her big diamond ring on her finger and her gold watch was lying on her dresser. Shortly after that freaky incident, another female guest named Doris just vanished from the hotel. She didn't pay her bill, but left behind a paper bag with her college diploma and some clothes inside, as well as a note. Why would she even have her college diploma with her at a hotel? That's so weird. As for the note, it said, "For weeks I've been looking for a job and haven't found one. Now I'm at the end of my resources. No money, no job, I haven't eaten in 3 days. I haven't any money to pay for this room. Isn't it funny? I've a college degree and it means less than nothing. Life's like that. Marvelous world, isn't it? Thanks for your kindness, Doris Fowler." Well, a few days later, Doris reappeared, but not at the hotel. She was found at a gas station with no idea who she was or how she got there. Those kinds of stories always skeeve me out. Like, if I were to not remember what happened to me for days, I would be panicking. In December of 1944, a married alcoholic woman, Virgie, met an ex-sailor, Otto Wilson, at a bar downtown. This already sounds like a disaster, right? From what I could gather, I think Virgie was a woman of the night and Otto hired her. The couple checked into Hotel Barclay under a fake name. They went up to the room and started gulping down whiskey. At one point, Virgie asked Otto for more money and he got super mad. He started throwing hands and suddenly Otto had strangled Virgie and was slashing her into pieces using a new blade he had just bought. This was all because she wanted $20. Later, Otto said, "I was going to dismember the body and get rid of it, but I found that I couldn't do it, so I left." Yeah, Otto literally mutilated Virgie, left her in the room, well, actually the closet, and went out for the night. What did he do after, you ask? Go see a movie. I will never understand how anyone can just casually go on with their evening after doing something so horrific. It's like how the Night Stalker would just raid his victim's pantry after executing them. So creepy. Anyway, Otto went out and saw a movie at the $1 Million Theater across the street on South Broadway. A few days later, he found a new lady friend named Lillian and took her to another hotel in the area. And guess what? He freaking killed her too. After that, Otto decided he didn't want to see a movie this time. He wanted to get a drink. He went over to a bar, sat down, and ordered something strong. There was a police officer at the bar who saw Otto's red-stained hands and grew suspicious. By that point, I'm pretty sure a maid at Hotel Barclay had already found Virgie's chopped up body parts in the closet, and Lillian was discovered too. So the cops were on high alert looking for whoever did this. The officer at the bar ended up arresting Otto on suspicion that he was the executioner they were looking for. And the way he arrested him was pretty freaking epic. He went up to Otto, who said, "What do you want?" The cop said, "This." He grabbed his handcuffs and clicked them on Otto's wrists. Doesn't that sound like it's straight out of a movie? Otto was later convicted and found guilty for 2 counts of manslaughter, and in 1946, he was tossed in a gas chamber where he took his last breath. Years passed and Hotel Barclay continued going downhill. 3 fires happened in the early 70s, which a few people lost their lives in, which means more ghosty friends to haunt the halls. One of the most notable guests to last stay in the hotel was Vaughn Greenwood, but you might know him as the Skid Row slasher. Yeah, I don't know what it is about serial killers staying at hotels in downtown Los Angeles, but if you remember the episode we did on the Hotel Cecil, a bunch of criminals stayed there too. Our guy Vaughn had a reputation of slaying homeless people and drifters with no permanent address in downtown Los Angeles. And the way he did it was absolutely terrible. He would slash their throats open from ear to ear, take off their shoes, sprinkle salt around their bodies, and leave cups of their vital fluid next to them as well. Some people say he even drank some of it too. Ew! And guess what? One of Vaughn's victims was executed in a room at Hotel Barclay. So during the wintertime in 1975, Vaughn was staying there in room 528. Around that time, a middle-aged drifter named Samuel Suarez used $20 from his upcoming Social Security check to rent a room at the hotel. Super early one morning, Samuel came downstairs to the lobby and sought assistance from one of the overnight employees. Instead of asking what was wrong or how they could help, the staff member was like, "You should go back up to your room, sir. It's 5 a.m. Samuel did, and just 6 hours later, his cold, limp body was found in his 5th floor room. Dang, I bet that employee felt super guilty. Leroy, another guest who was staying at the hotel, said he heard someone open a window, climb through, and knock on the door next to him. The person inside asked, "Who's there?" And the man outside said, "A friend." Leroy said his neighbor didn't open the door, and the man then came to his door and knocked. So maybe that was Vaughn, and he was just trying to get someone to open the door so he could snuff them. The only thing strange about this all is that Samuel matched Vaughn's target victim perfectly. Was that just a coincidence? Possibly. It also could be because the hotel's clientele had significantly changed by then, so it was more common for a low-income person to be staying there than someone rich and famous. What wasn't a coincidence, however, is how Samuel was found, with his throat sliced and salt sprinkled around his body. This was definitely done by the Skid Row slasher. Vaughn was eventually identified and arrested after killing at least 11 people. He was sentenced to life in prison in 1977, and the judge said he should never be released because his presence in any community would constitute a menace. Yeah, I agree. And I most definitely won't be staying at Hotel Barclay anytime soon. I'm not trying to sleep in a room where a mass executioner claimed one of his victims. And just imagine how many ghosts are there tormenting guests. Actually, I don't think the hotel is currently open because it was bought out and is undergoing remodels. From what I can tell, the new owners plan to open it to the public again in the future, so just be sure to steer clear, unless you want to gamble with your life. But I would suggest reading the Yelp reviews for this place because they're hilarious. Maybe eat some dal makhani while you read. Well everyone, thanks for tuning in to Killer Bites. I'll see you next time.